Jonathan with Hartford Baptist Church, and welcome to James episode 15. Hope you all are feeling well, avoiding the corona, and staying safe. I know there's some who have to go out and work, especially those in the medical field. Our prayers are with you. Students, our prayers are with you that you do not get bored, die of boredom. Now, I'm sure your teachers, I gave you plenty of homework, we'll call it. Homeschooling homework, and I'm pretty sure there's more of that to come. It looks like school's going to be out for a while. But today we're in James, we're still in chapter 4. But we're only going to look at 2 verses. And the reason just 2 verses today is because they can cause some confusion, these 2 verses. But let's read these in. We're going to look at Paul again, because it seems at times Paul contradicts James. And this is another one of those instances where it looks like Paul contradicts James, but we're going to look at it and see, does he really contradict? Do they contradict each other? Starting in verse 11, do not speak let me start that over. Do not speak evil against one another, brothers. The one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is only one lawgiver and judge, he who is able to save and to destroy. But who are you to judge your neighbor? So it looks like here James is like, oh, don't judge people. This would be a passage that we would use to say, hey, don't judge, don't judge. That's what it says here, right? Don't judge. And there's other passages too that appear to say don't judge. But we need to always take those in context. Don't judge about what. Now, we got to look at the who and the what of that. But I'm going to jump to, let's go to, there's several passages we can look at. We're going to do 1 Corinthians 5 something. I'm going to scroll down to where we want to be. All right. And let's go all the way down to, let's start in verse 9 here. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 9. I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with the sexually immoral people, not at all meaning the sexual immoral of this world, or the greedy or swindlers or idolaters, since then you would need to go out of the world. But now I'm writing to you not to associate with anyone who bears the name of brother, that's to bear the name of Christian, that's to be someone who claims the title Christian, as the net reads, not to associate with anyone who bears the name Christian, if he is guilty of sexual immorality or greed, or is an idolater, or a reviler, a drunkard, a swindler, not even to eat with such a one. For what have I to do with judging outsiders? Is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? So it looks like Paul is saying don't judge outsiders, but is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? Then he says, verse 13, God judges those outside, purge the evil person from among you. So what's going on in this church? They have a person who is unrepentant, engaged in a horrible act of sexual immorality. He won't abandon it. Paul's telling him, kick him out of the church. You are to judge this person, or you are to judge his actions, and if he doesn't repent, you cast him out. You purge the evil person. Paul's got a command pretty clear. It's a standard for believers to hold believers accountable. That's what Paul's teaching here. It's what Jesus taught in Matthew chapter 18 when he lays out how we do church discipline. How we give that person multiple times to repent, and we increase the accountability, and if they refuse to repent, then Jesus says, make them like a tax collector to you. Make them nothing. Paul says, purge them from you. And that's what he's talking about there. And just to make sure that we are clear on that, where he says, is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? The Greek reads even more. No, the English like, well, I don't know, is it? Paul doesn't say for sure it is. Well, in the Greek, he kind of does. Uki, the word here that's used, when it's used in a question, it expects an affirmative answer. I'll highlight that in blue for you. So you see that in the Greek lexicon. So Paul's expecting, yes. Yes, you are. So Paul is saying, yeah, you are to judge those inside the church. But this is in regards to sin. This is in regards to action. So we need to look at James and see if James is holding to that same standard. Is James talking about judging action, or is he judging the person? When we look at, going all the way back to chapter 2, James talked about the sin of partiality. So when he started addressing believers in their sin of partiality, where they favored the rich over the poor. Because we were acting like groupies, apparently. Still do that today. We like the celebrities. James warned against the sin of partiality. Then he warns against the sin of speech. No, just abusive speech. Then the sin of envy and jealousy. And then he goes on to talk about the sin of friendship with the world, where he's established that we're dividing the church, we're fighting amongst ourselves, we're attacking each other, but yet we seek to be friends with the world for whatever reason. Now, probably that sin of partiality is affecting that as well. But now he's back onto judging brothers one another. So this is judging in the church. But nowhere does James refer to judging someone's sin. It's always addressing the believer, addressing other believers, how he acts towards other believers. And we got to look at right at in 11 there, that speak evil against. Of course, the Greeks it's basically dead. Now, slander is a good word there used for it. But this is to speak ill of, speak degradingly of, speak evil, defame, slander. We're the ones in the wrong here. We're not calling out someone's sin and calling them to repent because they're stuck in it, and we're doing it out of love. We are attacking. We are the ones sinning, attacking them, accusing them of something that may not even be true, and we're just wanting to degrade their character. This feeds off of the sin of partiality, the sin of speech, the sin of envy and jealousy, the sin of wanting friendship with the world. Those can all drive this to cause us to speak ill of our brothers and sisters in the church. And that is what James is telling us not to do. So this judging, of course, so how does this speaking ill affect us judging? Well, in context of verse 12, he says there's only one lawgiver and one judge who is able to save and destroy. So it looks like that James is warning against basically pronouncing judgments of eternity on somebody. We're through our evil speech, our slander, our degradation of somebody else. We're presenting them as unworthy of being in a church, unworthy of the gospel perhaps, or out of jealousy or envy, we withhold things from them. The gospel, for instance. But this is us judging them on maybe we don't like their haircut. Maybe we don't like their skin color. Maybe we don't like the way they look. We're showing sins of partiality. Because we got to take all of James in the context that he's led up to this point. So this isn't us judging them on their actions. This is us judging based upon some human standard. We don't like something about them. It's not about holding them accountable to obey God's law. James is actually holding us accountable to obey God's law. And whenever we speak evil against such a person, whenever we slander a person, he says we're speaking evil against the law. What does it mean by, no, we're not loving our neighbor. We're not loving our neighbor as ourselves. And that we're breaking the law. We are sinning because we are not treating our brother as we should, or sister as we should. And that's why he says, but who are you to judge your neighbor? You don't have that right to proclaim upon your brother or sister that they're not worthy enough to be in your church. They're not good enough to do, they're not good enough to do whatever, It's judging a person's, we'll call it their personality more so than their actions, or maybe just the way they look. So we're not to judge them based upon their character as much as we are, as according to Paul, we judge their actions. That's the command we are to do. So we do judge upon the actions of a believer. We hold each other accountable, and we also have to allow them to judge our actions. They may be wrong, and we may be wrong. But if our brother or sister has a concern that we're doing something sinful, we are obligated to listen. And if we disagree with them, we share with them why we disagree. But we do it with respect, and we have that conversation because they're doing it out of love. But now, if we're attacking somebody's character, their looks, their dress, and I'm not talking like lewd dress, just because they're wearing Reebok shoes instead of Nike, something superficial, something worldly. That is wrong, and that's the kind of judging we need to avoid. Not the kind that helps hold us accountable to God's law and helps us grow closer to God. James is warning of superficial, worldly judgment here, just based upon the context of chapters 2 through 4 at this point. So I'm going to end it there, and And just a reminder that HBC has no church services. Youth, we're probably going to do a Bible study Wednesday. We'll most likely do Skype. So if you want to go ahead and download Skype to your phone or your tablet or computer, you'll need that. And adults, Pastor Jason's working on a few things for the entire church, different ways to interact, to encourage each other, strengthen each other. But more to that to come. I won't do any spoilers yet because they don't work out. But other than that, there is no church services in-house. Nothing Wednesdays, nothing Sundays. But we'll continue to keep you updated as the coronavirus evolves, the pandemic evolves, one direction or the other. But as today, just your quiet time, your prayer time, think about how you see others. And specifically when you're critical of others, are you critical of the actions that they're sinful? Your brother or sister has a pornography addiction. That's okay to call them out on that. That is a biblical judging, as Paul would say. And you're calling out the sexual immorality in them. You're judging that action, trying to help them be a better person. Or do we judge them because we don't like something about them? We don't like their job, we don't like their car. So whenever we're critical of someone, why are we critical of them? Is it superficial, or is it because now we see a sin in them that we want to be fixed? And one, if you just speak to others about that sin and you just let that thought process burn inside you and you never call them out on it, what's the purpose then? If you truly think your brother or sister is doing something sinful, then approach them about it. As step one, Jesus tells us in Matthew 18. Step two, if they don't listen to you then, bring a witness. Call them out on their sin again. And if they refuse to listen to you and the third party you've brought involved, then you take them, then you get your pastor involved, your youth pastor involved. And that's steps that Jesus has walked us through on church discipline, holding each other accountable. That's the biblical model, not talking to others about what that person's doing. That is that slander. That is that evil speak that James warns us against. All right, we'll end it there, and until next time.